There's no getting around it. The Denver Broncos have had a very disappointing season. There's a lot of things you could point to. Obviously, there's one thing that most people are pointing towards. I'm sure some people are just going to say in the comment section, it's Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett suck. Why are we even making a video about it? We all know it. Well, I like to make videos about things and get into more details because obviously there's always more than just the narrative that exists, right? There's always more to it than just that. There's always going to be some small things that factor in. So let's talk about what is the issue. And we're going to start off by looking at the chart you see on the screen. This is their PFF grades from last year and from this year in each positional category, talking about what the issues have been from last year to this year. I know that the Broncos haven't exactly, they weren't exactly great last year. They went 7-10 though, and so they've been worse this year as they're 4-10 now. Unless they win out, they are going to have a worse record this year than they did last year. So what were some of the issues? And just in general, we can look at this stuff and kind of evaluate it while also seeing a baseline from this year and last year. One thing worth noting is that, yes, the quarterback play did drop off from Teddy Bridgewater to Russell Wilson, which is not a sentence I thought I would say heading into this season. But yeah, it's true. Bridgewater outperformed Russell Wilson so far in a Broncos uniform. Not massively, though. Neither one were spectacular, and it's certainly not a difference of too much going on. So while that certainly has been an issue, what are the other issues at play? Well, one thing worth noting, the pass blocking has gotten worse this year. Okay, not a massive jump as well, but still a sizable jump of 6 spots. I mean, that matters. Run blocking's been about the same, but what hasn't been about the same is the other two offensive categories. The receiving game and the running game have been massively worse this season. Pro Football Focus has their receiving game as the worst ranked receiving game in football, and watching the tape, I don't necessarily disagree. Sure, they have some players who can make plays. There's no such thing as a receiving core that doesn't have any player who can make plays, right? Every receiving core has guys who can get open at times. They've just really struggled at consistently getting open, despite the fact that they do have some name brand recognition in that position grouping, and because of that, it's really made things a lot more difficult on Russell Wilson, especially when Wilson is kind of known for being the guy who scrambles around and then throws one deep and finds somebody who's open. When guys aren't getting open, he's not really the game manager type so much as he is more of a playmaking type. He can do both. When he was in his heyday, he was good at both of that stuff, not just the playmaking stuff, but when kind of what he's known for is getting taken out of the game. And really, just in general, every quarterback looks bad when you're playing with the worst receiving core in football. Every quarterback does. That's not to make excuses for Wilson. He's also played poorly, but both things can be, it does obviously correlate to some degree. It's also probably just an adjustment for Russell Wilson. He was playing with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, so he was playing with a couple of really good receivers, probably just an adjustment. And the running game has massively dropped off from last year to this year. The Javonte Williams injury, obviously, a huge role in that. So in some areas, hey, you know what you have to get better at if you're Denver? You have to go out, you have to get a receiver. Do what you can, whatever you got to do, get a receiver. Maybe it's coaching as well, which has hurt the receiving core. I'm willing to believe that's probably a part of it, but you have to do that. You have to make sure that you get a receiver, and then, hopefully your running back room just gets healthy, and that can improve, and then hopefully just those two things will allow Wilson to improve. Because the flip side is the defense has actually been massively better this year from last year, which is surprising when you factor in that they got rid of Von Miller midway through last year and they got rid of Bradley Chubb midway through this year. But despite that, they still have massively performed better defensively with the best coverage unit in football, according to PFF, and still a above average pass rush and a top 10 run defense. So the defense is legit, and because of that, you definitely feel like there is hope for the future. So as a whole, I think that there's several different ways that we can look at this stuff. I think on one hand, you could sit here and say, okay, you know what the issue is with the Denver Broncos? The issue is Russell Wilson just has to play better. That's true. I mean, you look at the passing situation of 23rd in passing, yeah, you do kind of have to get better in that spot. You have to perform better than 23rd in passing if you're paying that much money for a quarterback. You paid that much draft picks. You expected Russell Wilson. I think reasonable expectations for Russell Wilson was a top 10 quarterback. I don't know if reasonable expectations was a top 5 quarterback. Now, He has played like a top 5 quarterback for most of his career, but he was coming off an injury. He didn't look good last year. I think it was reasonable to say, and part of it too is there's just been, a lot more good quarterbacks come out these past few years, like, Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes, so kind of just guys who have passed him by a little bit. But being a tier 2 quarterback, it would still be a massive improvement. And if he just jumps up to that realistically could be all this Denver team needs to get to be at least a fringe playoff team. Obviously, getting Tim Patrick back will help for the Denver Broncos receiving core, but you need more than just Tim Patrick. Right now, it's been kind of a mess, and getting healthy is one thing, but I think going out and just trying to find a way to get a number 1 receiver. However you can do it, find a way to trade for a number 1 receiver. Anything you can do there, that's kind of the main thing that they're going to want to do for the future, I would think. We can also look at these charts, just interested in it for this. Again, kind of a weird one where a lot of times when I'm doing the what went wrong, I'm doing it with teams that had expectations because they had a good year. The last year with this team, they did not have expectations because they were good last year. They had expectations because of who they added in Russell Wilson, but still, they were decent last year, and part of how they were decent is you look at their pass frequency over expected. They were a run-heavy team last year, which is interesting, and probably part of why Bridgewater was able to be effective, and maybe why these receivers were able to be effective, is they were doing a lot of stuff off of play action, and a lot of kind of, a simpler offense that they had, and they weren't relying on those receivers as much as, again, 5% under pass frequency, 5% under expected, meaning they run the ball 5% more than the average team does, is pretty significant there. Going over to this year, it's not a massive jump, but it is a jump. I mean, actually a pretty sizable jump, a 3% jump. That's significant to some degree. Of now they're still running the ball more than the average team is on every single play, but it's not quite as dramatic. Like on a second down and second and 1, they're for some reason throwing the ball a ton more than the average team does, so that's interesting. But as a whole, pretty much everywhere else, they are running the ball, around what average or under average, with the exception of a couple categories where they're just above average there. So, there's still a team that they run the ball a little bit more, but it's nowhere near as much. And part of me does wonder if this has kind of put more stress on the receiving core, and that's kind of what's hurt it. It's just speculation. I don't know. I don't know if that's what's made the receiving core look worse this year. Injuries have obviously been a part of it, but still, that's kind of the main thing they have to do, and the main thing they have to improve in the future. And the main thing that went wrong, in my opinion, was the receiving core. Now, is part of that because of Russell Wilson? Is part of that because of Nathaniel Hackett? To some degree, probably yes, to both of that stuff. Those 3 things have to get better next year if they are going to be a playoff team, but I don't think it's that crazy that they could. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.